The day I signed my divorce papers, my boss raped me. The alcohol that night was like sticky glue, blocking my mouth, nose, and breath. The customer's laughter, Saul's protective hand constantly filling my glass, all became distorted patterns against a blurry background. Monica can hold her liquor well, so another toast to Peter. I can't remember how much I drank, all I remember is the burning sensation in my stomach and the only clear thought in my mind: I can't drink anymore, Chuck is still waiting for me at home. Maybe he won't wait for me. The divorce agreement I signed and put in the drawer is like a piece of ice, constantly reminding me of the tragedy of this marriage. By the end of the show, my steps were unsteady and my head was spinning. Monica, you can't go home like this. I'll take you home. Saul held me, his tone as usual gentle and unquestionable. I wanted to refuse, but my tongue was tied. He half carried me into the car. The vibrant cityscape outside the window receded rapidly, eventually sinking into an unsettling darkness. This isn't the way home. Saul, where is this? I struggled to ask, my voice as weak as a mosquito's. We're almost there. I'll take you to a convenient place to rest. He smiled, his hand resting naturally on my shoulder. Fear, like an icy snake, suddenly crawled up my spine. I wanted to push him away, but I was too weak. The car finally stopped beside a desolate rapeseed field. The strong aroma of rapeseed flowers mixed with the fishy smell of earth hit me, almost suffocating me. No. Don't. He roughly dragged me out of the car, my back slamming against the cold, wet ground. Why are you pretending to be so noble? Saul's face turned ferocious in the moonlight. Monica, if you follow me, I won't treat you unfairly at the company from now on. My struggle was like an ant trying to shake a tree in the face of his absolute power. The sound of clothes being torn was particularly harsh in the silent night. The cold air, carrying dirt, clung to my exposed skin. My body felt like it was sinking into an endless quagmire, and every struggle only made me sink deeper. The world was silent. Only his heavy breathing and the occasional barking of a dog in the distance, a symbol of civilization, could be heard. I opened my eyes wide and stared at the dark blue sky above, fragmented by rapeseed branches. Not a single star could be seen. Tears mixed with dirt flowed into my ears, a cold buzzing sound. At one point, I scratched with all my strength, my nails scratching his arms and neck, leaving blood marks and fragments of his skin. He felt the pain and slapped me across the face, swearing. At that moment, I stopped struggling. Like a soulless body, I let him do whatever he wanted. I don't know how long it took, but he finally got up from me, straightened his clothes, and regained his respectable demeanor. He threw down a few bills and said lightly, "Here, buy something nice. Telling anyone about what happened today won't do you any good." The car started, its taillights like the eyes of a demon, disappearing into the darkness. I lay there, motionless. The overpowering fragrance of the rapeseed flowers seemed to take on a physical form, seeping into every part of my body, threatening to suffocate me. After a long time, I slowly curled up and buried my face in the cold arms. The silent night swallowed everything. Even Monica, who once held out a glimmer of hope for life. My memory of how I got back to that so-called home is hazy. I only remember opening the door and hearing my mother's shrill voice pierce my eardrums. "You still remember to come back? Look at the time. How can a woman be drunk outside every day? What a shame." My father sat on the sofa with a sullen face and said nothing, but the disappointment in his eyes was more painful than scolding. My younger brother, Devon, popped his head out of the room and looked at me worriedly. I opened my mouth, wanting to say something, but no sound came out. I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. The warm water rushed over me, but I felt no warmth at all. I scrubbed my body vigorously, my skin reddening and nearly bleeding, but the sticky, stained feeling seemed to have seeped into my bones and would not be washed away. The mirror was fogged with water vapor, unable to reflect my expression. I lowered my head, looking at the tiny specks of skin and blood between my fingernails that didn't belong to me. "This is evidence," a voice in my head said. "But, sue him? What can I use to sue him? He's Saul, a middle manager at the company, rich and powerful. And I, Monica, am just an ordinary employee struggling to make ends meet. Who would believe me? Just bear it, I thought to myself, what my mother might say. Don't embarrass yourself. Yes, it's embarrassing. In this isolated little place like ours, if a woman encountered something like this, the only one who would be criticized would be herself. I changed into clean clothes and mechanically walked out of the bathroom. In the living room, my mother continued to chatter, "What are you going to do about Chuck? Give it to him as soon as the divorce papers are signed. Don't delay it and waste his time." Chuck. The name made my heart twitch. I returned to the now cold bedroom where I had once shared a life with Chuck and opened a drawer. The divorce agreement lay quietly there. My signature glared. Perhaps this was fate. When I decided to end a failing marriage, life dealt me an even heavier blow. I picked up the agreement, walked into the living room, and placed it on the coffee table in front of my mother. I signed it. My voice was hoarse. My mother picked it up and looked at it, her expression slightly brighter. "That's right." She didn't finish her words because I turned back to my room and pulled out a small bottle from the back of the closet. It was the sleeping pills the doctor had prescribed for my insomnia, and there was still more than half a bottle left. Without hesitation, I unscrewed the bottle cap and poured all the small white pills into my mouth, swallowing them down with a splash of ice-cold tap water. Then, I lay down on the bed, pulled the covers over me, and waited for the eternal darkness to descend. Fine. Let it be over. I'm so tired. When I opened my eyes again, I saw the pale white ceiling of the hospital and the smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. I woke up. My sister woke up. It was Devon's sobbing voice. My mother rushed over, crying and cursing. "You damned girl. You scared me to death. What's so crazy about you that you have to go down this path? It's just a divorce, right? Divorce, then divorce. I'll support you." My father stood by the bed, his eyes red and his lips trembling, before finally letting out a heavy sigh. Looking at them, my heart went numb. Is even death so difficult? The ward door was flung open, and Chuck rushed in. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were black, his chin was covered in stubble, and his overalls were stained with oil. It was obvious he had just come from the auto repair shop. He rushed to the bed and grabbed my hand, holding it so tightly that it seemed as if I would disappear if he let go. His eyes were fixed on me, bloodshot, filled with fear, and a turbulent emotion that I couldn't understand. "Why?" His voice was hoarse. "Monica, tell me why?" I avoided his gaze and remained silent. My mother wiped her tears and said, "Why else? She must feel that life is unbearable. If she gets divorced, what will she do in the future?" Chuck seemed not to hear what his mother said. He just looked at me and asked word by word, "Did something else happen?" My heart skipped a beat. At this time, a man in police uniform followed in. It was Chuck's friend, Frank, a police officer from the police station. Frank looked serious. He looked at me, then at Chuck, and whispered, "Chuck, come out for a moment." Chuck gave me a deep look and followed Frank out of the ward. Frank's voice faintly rang out from the corridor. "We checked the surveillance footage. Last night, Saul took her to a rapeseed field on the outskirts of the city. This morning, some residents doing morning exercises found torn clothing and signs of a struggle. Combined with Monica's situation. I can't hear the rest of the conversation, but I know Chuck knows." A moment later, the door to the ward opened again. Only Chuck walked in. He walked over to my bedside, each step like a knife's edge. He leaned over, his hands on either side of my bed, enclosing me in his shadow. His eyes were red, filled with raging anger and a bottomless heartache. "Monica," his voice was low, with a determination to destroy everything, "I will not divorce you." He looked at me, his words clear and precise, "We can't just let this go. Let's sue him." "Sue him? What?" My mother was the first to object. "Do you have any evidence?" No evidence is a false accusation. Who is Saul? Can we afford to offend him? Do we still want to keep Monica's reputation? Reputation? Chuck suddenly looked at his mother, his eyes sharp as a knife. Mom, is Monica's life more important, or that empty reputation? You. His mother was choked and speechless. Her father sighed heavily. Chuck, it's not that we don't want to, it's just that the world is difficult. So, if it's difficult, then why not sue? Chuck wouldn't budge an inch. Was he just going to let Monica suffer this in vain? Was he going to let her live in this shadow for the rest of her life? He turned to me, his eyes burning. Monica, tell me, do you want to sue? Everyone's eyes were on me. Do I? That silent night, the cold earth, the tearing pain, the desperate suffocation. Scenes flashed before my eyes. If I tell, I might be ruined and lose everything. If I don't, I will spend the rest of my life in self-loathing and nightmares. I looked into Chuck's eyes, which were full of strength and hope, and reflected my pale and cowardly shadow. A faint, yet incredibly resilient force slowly grew from the depths of my heart. I opened my mouth and, with all my strength, uttered a single word, sued. Darkness doesn't swallow up light, it simply makes it more precious. After deciding to call the police, I returned to my small home with Chuck. He quietly put away the divorce agreement and never mentioned it again. Every morning, he would warm me a cup of soy milk, accompanied by steamed buns or fried dough sticks he had bought earlier. A full stomach gives you strength to fight. He always said that. The police opened a case and an investigation began. But the process was far more difficult than we had imagined. Saul had come prepared. He admitted to having sex that night, but he insisted it was consensual. He even produced a used condom as evidence and a carefully edited recording in which he twisted my feeble refusal into half-hearted consent. To make matters worse, my colleague Vera, the girl who always followed me around, gave false testimony to the police. She said she had seen me flirting with Saul on a regular basis, and that I had even thrown myself into his arms during the drinking party. Somehow, the news leaked out, and the town was in an uproar. I always say it takes two to tango. She doesn't look like a serious person. Is it all about money? She's backstabbing after a failed deal? Rumors flew like poisoned arrows from all directions. Words like bitch and blackmail were spray-painted in red paint on the doorway of our house. My mother called, sobbing, complaining that she couldn't hold her head up in her hometown, that her relatives were pointing fingers at her. I locked myself in the room, feeling that the little courage I had just built up was being crushed by reality bit by bit. One morning, I mustered up the courage to go to the company to complete the resignation procedures. As soon as I entered the office, all noises ceased. My once familiar colleagues now looked at me with strange, inquiring, and even contemptuous eyes. Vera swayed over and slammed a stack of documents onto my desk, the sound just loud enough for everyone to hear. Monica, this is the work you didn't finish earlier. Saul asked you to hand it over to me. TSK, some people, they're dirty themselves, don't get anything dirty too. A few male colleagues who usually fawned over Saul let out a low chuckle. Humiliation and anger erupted in my chest like a volcano. I stood there, cold all over, my hands and feet shaking. In the past, I might have endured it silently, packed up my things, and left in disgrace. But at that moment, Chuck's words rang in my ears, Monica, we can't let others bully us. I looked at Vera's face, which was filled with scorn, and the gloating eyes around me. I felt a strength I had never felt before. I suddenly raised my hand and flipped over the desk in front of me. Clatter. Documents, pen holders, and water cups fell to the ground. The loud noise startled everyone. I pointed at Vera, my voice trembling with excitement, but very clear. Vera, speak honestly. Do you think your rhetoric justifies the salary you're paid? How much money did Saul pay you to make you lose all sense of morality? I glanced around again, scanning every dodging face, and you. What's really going on? Don't you really know? Today you can laugh at my joke and help the evildoer here. But if the same thing happens to your wife, sister, or daughter tomorrow, will you also applaud? The entire office was utterly silent, a pin drop audible. I bent down, picked up the few insignificant items I owned, straightened my back, and, under the gazes of everyone, walked out. The sunlight was a bit blinding, but I felt like the huge rock that had been weighing on my chest had loosened a little. When I got home, Chuck was busy in the repair shop. Seeing me, he put down his wrench, walked over, and handed me a glass of warm water. "Are you back?" He didn't ask anything. I took the water cup, looked at his greasy yet remarkably composed face, and whispered, "Chuck, I lost my job." "Okay, got it," he said calmly, "if the old doesn't go, the new won't come." I even flipped the desk in my office. Chuck was stunned for a moment, then a faint but genuine smile slowly curled up his lips. He reached out and ruffled my hair vigorously. "Well done." At that moment, I clearly felt that the glimmer of light called hope penetrated the thick haze and shone into my almost dry heart. Filing a report to the police didn't make things go smoothly, instead, it dragged us deeper into a quagmire. Due to Saul's evidence and his social connections, the investigation reached a deadlock. Although the police had filed a case, they were unable to transfer it to the procuratorate. Under Saul's deliberate manipulation, public opinion became almost one-sided. Some even started to expose Chuck, accusing him of using inferior parts and cheating customers at his auto repair shop. Although these were all false accusations, they still had an impact on Chuck's business. Pressure was like an invisible net, tightening from all sides. One night, my mother and father showed up. As soon as they entered, my mother burst into tears. "Monica, please stop suing. If you keep suing, our whole family will be drowned in spit. Your brother hasn't even gotten married yet. If his reputation gets ruined, who would want to marry him?" His father squatted at the door, chain-smoking, and muffled his words, "Chuck, we know you care about Monica. But life has to go on. You can't beat them, just admit defeat. At worst, we can move out, leave here." "Move out?" Chuck looked at them, his eyes filled with deep exhaustion and confusion. "Dad, Mom, Monica wasn't the one who did anything wrong. Why do you want us to move out? Why should we admit defeat? Just because we're ordinary people. What do we have to fight them? Money? Power? Connections? We have nothing. If this continues, both of you will be ruined," my mother cried passionately. Looking at my parents' faces, filled with fear and helplessness, my heart ached like a needle. I knew they were afraid, worried about our family. But their "this is for your own good" was like a blunt knife, slicing away at my remaining dignity. "Mom," I said, my voice unusually calm. "If it was Devon's girlfriend who was violated today, would you also persuade her to endure it and admit her mistake?" My mother was stunned, her mouth open, unable to speak. "I will not withdraw the lawsuit." I looked at her and said word by word, "Even if everyone thinks I am dirty, shameless, and crazy, I will continue to sue to the end. I wasn't doing this to prove myself, I was doing it to tell everyone, and myself, that I was not wrong. The one who was wrong was the abuser." My mother looked at me like a stranger. Finally, she stamped her feet in despair and pulled my father away. Silence returned to the house. Chuck walked over to me and hugged me tightly. His embrace was warm and solid, my only support on this thorny road. "Don't be afraid," he whispered in my ear, "they don't support you, but I do. No matter how difficult this road is, I'll walk it with you." To find a breakthrough, I began studying law on my own. My younger brother, Devon, a law student, brought me thick volumes of criminal law and criminal procedure law. During the day, I spent my days poring over obscure laws and judicial interpretations, word by word, in front of books and computers. At night, Chuck, Devon, and I analyzed case files, searching for loopholes in Saul's testimony. "Sister, Saul said you and I were in a relationship, so why would he do it in a rapeseed field in the middle of nowhere? That doesn't make sense." Dashcam. "Chuck, didn't you say that Saul's car seemed to have stopped near your shop that night? Is there a way to find dashcam footage from that night?" Devin's words ignited our consciousness. Chuck sprang into action. He mobilized all his connections, conducting both open and covert investigations, searching for any dashcam footage from that night. The process was long and arduous, like searching for a needle in a haystack. Meanwhile, I was trying to recall every detail of that night. Saul's deft technique, his subsequent threat that telling it won't do you any good, didn't seem like someone who'd made a mistake for the first time. I had a vague feeling that I might not be the only victim. I told this idea to Frank and the lawyer in charge of the case. They also began to follow this clue, secretly investigating Saul's past whereabouts and the women he had contacted. Late one night, Chuck came back exhausted, but there was a strange light in his eyes. He closed the door and said to me in a low voice, "Monica, I may have found something important." He told me that he had found a distant cousin of Saul through an acquaintance. This cousin used to work in Saul's company but was forced out because he couldn't stand some of Saul's behavior. He revealed a key piece of information: Saul had a habit of backing up some important and shady things in a USB flash drive, and he hid that USB flash drive in the interlayer of his mother's urn. The urn? I gasped. This person is so cunning and disgusting. We have to get that USB drive. Chuck's eyes were determined. But how easy is this? The urn was stored in the funeral home's mourning hall, under guard. We had no legitimate reason or opportunity to touch it. The clue seemed so close, yet so far away. Just when we were at our wits' end regarding the USB drive, the case took an unexpected turn. Vera, who had been perjuring herself, actually contacted Frank and asked him to testify again. It turned out that Vera's sister had also come to the city to look for a job and was almost deceived by Saul using the same method. This incident greatly stimulated Vera, made her conscience awaken, and also made her feel scared. In front of the police, Vera burst into tears and admitted that she had been bribed and threatened by Saul to give false testimony. Moreover, she provided a secretly recorded conversation between Saul and her, in which Saul discussed how to frame me. In the recording, Saul personally admitted that I was unconscious that night, and proudly boasted about his experience in handling such matters. This new evidence, like a stone dropped into a stagnant pond, instantly stirred up 1,000 waves. The case was quickly transferred to the People's Procuratorate for prosecution. A ray of hope finally pierced through the layers of thorns and shone in. The Procuratorate filed a public prosecution against Saul for rape. On the day of the trial, the weather was overcast, and the courthouse entrance was crowded with reporters and onlookers. Chuck held my hand tightly, Devin followed us, and Frank, also in casual clothes, stood not far away, giving us an encouraging look. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and walked into the solemn courtroom. Saul appeared in a neat suit accompanied by his lawyer. He looked calm, and even when he looked at me, there was a hint of sarcasm at the corner of his mouth. The trial began, and the prosecutor read out the indictment, forcefully accusing Saul of his crimes. When it was Saul's turn to speak, he still insisted on his consensual story, even performing it more vividly. "Your Honor, I did have sex with Ms. Monica, but it was absolutely not forced. She was drunk and emotional that night, but there was a good impression between us. She even offered me a condom." He paused and looked at the jury with a helpless and aggrieved expression. "I admit that as a boss, it is unethical for me to have a relationship with my subordinates. I am willing to accept moral condemnation and internal company punishment. But to escalate it to rape is a completely false accusation against me. It was revenge because Ms. Monica didn't get what she wanted from me." His lawyer was also aggressive, seizing on Vera's previous perjury to attack the credibility of our witnesses and emphasizing the authenticity of the physical evidence, condoms, and recordings provided by Saul. There were whispers in the audience. My heart sank. I knew he would deny it, but I hadn't expected him to be so shameless. At this time, the prosecutor began questioning. "Defendant Saul, you said that your relationship with Monica was consensual and that she had feelings for you. So, please explain why you had sex in a remote, unattended rapeseed field on the outskirts of the city instead of in a hotel or other more suitable place?" Saul's eyes flickered. At the time, I was just letting my emotions take over, not giving it much thought. I was letting my emotions take over? The prosecutor's tone was sharp. According to the police investigation, the rapeseed field was quite a distance from the main road, the ground was muddy, and the environment was harsh. Would a normal man, when in the mood for a drunken woman he's attracted to, choose a place that would clearly cause her discomfort and pain? Saul was speechless for a moment. The prosecutor pressed the case. You claimed that Ms. Monica asked for benefits from you and you did not satisfy her, so you called the police. So, why did she choose to commit suicide by taking a large amount of sleeping pills in the 10 hours between the incident and her reporting the crime to the police? Please explain why someone who was trying to blackmail you with sex would take such extreme action. Beads of sweat began to form on Saul's forehead. I don't know. Maybe she regretted it, or there's some other reason. Also, the prosecutor produced a new recording provided by Vera. Please listen to it. The recording was played clearly in court, and Saul's cold voice in it was chilling. That woman refused to accept my offer and then drank the forfeit. Vera, you do as I say, and I guarantee she won't be able to stand up again. This isn't my first time doing this, I know how to clean up my mess. Objection. Saul's lawyer suddenly stood up and said, this evidence is from an illegal source. It was secretly recorded. Your Honor, the prosecutor responded calmly that the content of the recording is directly related to the key facts of this case and can prove that the defendant has obstructed testimony. Its probative value far outweighs the minor flaws in the way the evidence was collected. The judge paused for a moment and declared, the objection is invalid. Please proceed, prosecutor. The balance of the trial began to tilt in our favor. Finally, during the courtroom debate, our lawyer delivered the most powerful blow yet, the USB drive hidden in the urn. Although we didn't get the USB drive directly in the end, the police obtained a search warrant through legal application and successfully seized it. The lawyer described the contents stored in the USB drive in court. Not only the dashcam footage related to my case, which clearly recorded the violent process of him dragging me out of the car, but also recordings and videos of him with other different women in similar situations, as well as his detailed hunting records and aftermath guide. This USB flash drive completely confirmed Saul as a serial offender, a demon who took pleasure in violating and controlling women. The evidence was overwhelming. Saul's composure finally crumbled, turning pale. His lawyer also sat down dejectedly, powerless to change the situation. After the court adjourned for deliberation, the judge solemnly pronounced the verdict: the defendant Saul was guilty of rape. The facts were clear, the evidence was reliable and sufficient, the circumstances of the crime were serious, and he was a repeat offender. According to the law, he was sentenced to life imprisonment and deprived of his political rights for life. The gavel fell with a resounding thud, bringing this long struggle to an end. As Saul was escorted away by the bailiff, he glanced back at me, his eyes filled with resentment, but more than that, utter despair. I looked back at him calmly, feeling no ecstasy as I'd imagined, only a sense of tranquility and relief after having weathered such a storm. Justice, though hard won, was ultimately present. As I walked out of the courtroom, the clouds had already parted and the sun was rising. The warm sunlight bathed my body. Reporters swarmed over me. I didn't shy away, nor did I say much. I simply held Chuck's hand tightly. Chuck looked down at me, his eyes filled with a smile of relief and unfathomable tenderness. It's over, he said. Well, I nodded, facing the sunshine, a slight smile on my face, and went home. Our home, the small auto repair shop that was once filled with cold wars and depression, finally ushered in a true new life. Saul was brought to justice and received the punishment he deserved. But life went on. Inevitably, cracks began to appear in my relationship with my family of origin. My parents later contacted me several times, their voices tinged with guilt and a frustrating attempt to make amends. I understand their fears and limitations, but some hurt, once done, can't be undone. I chose to forgive, but we can no longer be as close as we once were. I told them I would live my own life. Chuck and I never mentioned the divorce agreement again. After enduring life and death, false accusations, and struggles, our relationship had long since transcended the constraints of a marriage certificate. It is a bond that is integrated into the bones and blood, it is walking hand in hand in the darkness, and it is rebuilding each other on the ruins. We used all our savings, plus the legal aid provided by Devon and some of his classmates, to successfully deal with Saul's family's subsequent unreasonable harassment and compensation lawsuits. Life finally settled down. Chuck's auto repair shop business slowly recovered, and some of his old customers, who admired Chuck's character, even patronized his business. But I didn't look for a permanent job. After all this, I found what I really wanted to do. With the help of Devon, his mentor, and some enthusiastic lawyers, I set up a small legal aid office next door to Chuck's auto repair shop. We used a simple partition to separate the office. One half was a workshop filled with the smell of engine oil and metal, and the other half was an office filled with legal books and case files. The studio provides free legal advice and psychological support to women who have been violated but dare not or cannot speak out due to poverty, fear, or public pressure. The first person I helped was a young girl who was being harassed by her supervisor at the factory. She came to me timidly, her eyes filled with the same fear and helplessness that I had felt at the time. I poured her a cup of hot water, held her cold hand, and whispered, "Don't be afraid. Talk slowly. I'm here." Just like Chuck did for me back then, I told her everything about my experiences, my struggles, and my ultimate decision. It's not to gain sympathy, but to tell her, "Look, I was once as desperate as you, but we are not wrong. We can stand up bravely and defend our dignity and rights." As the girl listened, tears rolled down her cheeks, but her eyes gradually lit up with the same glimmer of courage that I had at the beginning. Chuck would come over and lean against the door frame after finishing his work, looking at me quietly. Sometimes, he would hand me a cup of tea or a piece of cake he had just bought. We didn't talk often, but a glance at each other was enough to make us understand each other's emotions. One evening, the afterglow of the setting sun painted the sky a warm orange. I saw off the last woman who came to consult and walked to the door of the repair shop. Chuck had just finished repairing a car and was wiping the sweat from his forehead with a greasy glove. Seeing me, he grinned, revealing his white teeth. The golden light outlined his tough features and illuminated the deep affection in his eyes, which had weathered many hardships but remained unchanged. I walked over and naturally reached out to help him straighten his slightly messy collar. He held my hand, his rough palm warm and strong. "Are you tired?" he asked. "No." I shook my head, looking at him, feeling reassured. He smiled, reaching out and gently holding me in his arms. We didn't say anything else, but just hugged each other quietly in front of the repair shop covered with sunset, listening to the hustle and bustle of the city coming from afar. All the suffering and pain of the past seemed to melt away in this warm and peaceful twilight. Life may be limited, but love is boundless. I know the road ahead may be bumpy, but I'm no longer afraid. For I now have a shore to lean on and a direction I'm willing to strive for.